suspect is now in custody and set to appear in court in the United States soon. Nearly 34 years ago, a Pan Am flight just exploded in midair over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing 270 people, everyone on board. 190 of those were Americans. Decades later, federal officials tell ABC News that a suspect is now in custody in connection with that attack, an officer with Libyan intelligence. ABC News contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett joins me now. So, Brad, when you heard about this, were you surprised? And what do you know? What do you make about this suspect?
So, Terry, I was not surprised. When I was still at the FBI, there were a number of agents that were still working on Pan Am 103. And it was, the best of my knowledge, there was just this one bomb maker that was left. If you might recall, two other folks from the Libyan intelligence service were identified. They believed that they planted a bomb on a feeder flight that eventually got to Pan Am 103, started in Malta, went to Frankfurt, eventually went to London, and then, as you described, it blew up over Lockerbie. It had a timed device inside an audio cassette player for it to go off at some approximate point once it got into the air out of London. So those two were eventually turned over by Gaddafi to the Scots in the Netherlands. They were tried. One was convicted. One was acquitted. The one that was convicted got life. But he, if you might recall, he got released in 2009 because of advanced cancer, died in 2012. That has left this one bomber hanging out there. Eventually, the FBI and others have figured out where he was. I don't have, obviously, any details, but they negotiated with somebody to turn him over to the FBI. And so they flew to some unknown location, scooped him up, brought him back, and now he's here on American soil to stand trial for what happened December 21st, 1988.
Yeah, I remember it so well, Brad, as I'm sure you do as well. It was just a horrifying, shocking crime and awful. It was the holiday season. There were all kinds of American students coming back from Europe, and their families still grieve. And so why? What role did Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan leader who ended up dead in a ditch when his people overthrew him, what role did he play? And did American investigators figure out why he did this?
So it's not totally clear. I can only tell you that it was believed early on that it was the Libyan intelligence service at the direction of Gaddafi. In 2012, the bomber that just got brought back to the United States was interviewed by Libyan intelligence officers. And he admitted his involvement, the other people's involvement, and stated that higher-ups in the Libyan intelligence service and Gaddafi himself had sanctioned this bombing. Your question, Terry, about why, there's only one thing that really comes to mind. In '86, there was a bombing in West Berlin at a discotheque. The U.S. and others believed that Gaddafi's intelligence officers did that. 10 days later, President Reagan sent the military and they bombed a number of locations in or around Gaddafi's residence. He claimed that one of his children were killed. That was never confirmed. But this supposedly was a retaliation to that bombing of him. Not sure if that's true, but it sort of makes sense based on Gaddafi's personality.
Yeah. And Brad, I want to ask you, given your years at the FBI, I've often wondered about what drives investigators who are working on a case like this, where the leads dry up, or just seems like international issues in this regard may prevent justice ever being done in the United States, and how people who have been working this case a long time might feel today.
Well, I think they feel terrific. And, you know, if you take it to a smaller scale, I've worked a lot of cold case, even high-profile homicides that went on for years before we could prove them. You have the added disadvantage, Terry, in this case, is that you've really got to work it internationally. Your bad guy is not in the United States. So you have to rely on other intelligence and law enforcement agencies to help you. That can be very time-consuming because you kind of have to keep the fire lit for them to help you. I mean, let's face it, 1988 was a long time ago. And so the persistence of investigators to eventually massage this case into a location where they could possibly grab him finally went together in the last few days. And it's just, it's hard to sort of imagine what you feel if you've worked on a case for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing accomplishment. And now the other side, all the families of those who died so long ago, so many of those people, as I said, young Americans. What does justice look like for them after all these years?
Well, in reading the interviews of some of them in the last day or so, I mean, they do feel like that maybe there is something that's finally going together in this case, and that justice will eventually be served, despite the fact as long as it's been. It also is very good, obviously, that law enforcement and prosecutors were willing to stick with the case this long. Now, granted, it was such a huge case until we had 9/11. It was the biggest terrorist attack we had ever dealt with. And so I think that's what comes out of this. You're not going to feel better because you've lost a loved one, but you always want these things to come to have some sort of end to them. And eventually they got their end with his arrest and his return to the United States.
Well, we certainly hope so. And Brad, thank you for bringing your experience and your insight to this case, this remarkable case, as you do for us so often. Thanks, Brad.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.